Recently, one would also now look out for, you see the scene out here when Mr. Combs' representation comes out, when his lawyers come out, how they talk is going to be important. With a client of this type of deep pockets, an appeal is going to be probably something that they're going to discuss, and a lot of times launching that effort begins with the moment they step out of the courtroom in front of cameras. So we got a lot to do here. What we do know is that coming back into today, the judge had been notified, and the court was notified through the judge, that the jurors said they were in agreement on 4 out of 5 counts. That was significant that they had agreement. Now, some people were, well, all the attention was then focused, rightly so, on the 1 count of racketeering, which would carry the heaviest prison time, and the fact that they could not agree. Now, some people characterize it with the word deadlocked. It seems a little bit over dramatic. There was a first day of full deliberations yesterday in a case that spanned 2 months, had more than 36 witnesses, was very difficult to navigate. So while some were saying they're deadlocked, it was like maybe they just haven't had the time to agree yet. And it seemed like the judge agreed with that perspective and said, you guys go back in on Wednesday and see if you can work it out. The fact that it took them less than an hour to work it out this morning is very interesting. We're going to try to talk to jurors as they come out, if they're willing to talk to us. We'll see what was in their mind frame, but certainly everybody knows this Friday is 4th of July, and nobody wanted to go there. In a federal courthouse such as this one, they were going to have Thursday off. The judge had said, I don't want the jurors to think about Thursday yet, but if they need to continue deliberations, I'm going to let them come in on Thursday and let that happen. Now, the jurors didn't know that, so maybe they thought Wednesday is a good time. Maybe, right? We'll see. That's one of the things we're going to ask the jurors when they come out here, guys. But certainly quite a momentous moment, but not a surprise. Legal analysts had said there was evidence in there of transportation of sex workers across state lines. There were credit card purchases. There were flights that people got on. So many people said if there are 2 charges, if there are 2 counts that Mr. Combs was most likely to be found guilty of, it was that transportation charge, and that's what he's been found guilty of here. But the sex trafficking and the racketeering, the fact that he was found not guilty on those are significant. It means the jurors of 8 men and 4 women felt like even with the very intense testimony of people like Cassie Ventura, that maybe they felt these were adults, they had a chance to walk away, but they didn't, much like what was the argument with the Harvey Weinstein case, right? And then finally on the racketeering charge, the jury had to be unanimous in finding 2 of the elements that satisfy a racketeering charge. They include kidnapping, witness tampering, drug distribution. They couldn't just say, well, I think there were these 2, and then the other jurors say, well, I saw those 2, and then say, okay, there was racketeering. They had to agree on which 2, and apparently they were not going to do that, and thus the decision. Guys?
You know what's kind of interesting? The prosecution must be very disappointed. The RICO count obviously would have been putting away Sean Diddy Combs for the rest of his life. Very important count. And then the other 2 that he was found not guilty on, sex trafficking of Jane, sex trafficking of Cassie, those probably would have carried bigger sentences as well for prison. This guilty on transporting people for prostitution, 2 counts. I think the maximum is 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, according to the New York Times, when Diddy heard that, he turned around to his family, gave them like a sign that he was praying, and then pumped his fist.
Well, obviously, one would assume that he's relieved that he's found not guilty on the sentence or charges that would give him a longer sentence. If this holds up, he's still going to prison for a while. You can say the maximum sentence is 10 years. He's already served about 1 because they arrested him in September of last year. So it'll be interesting to see, do they run them concurrently, which means at the same time, or do they make them consecutive, because they can do that with 2 charges, and you can give him, 8, 10 years. Now you're talking 16 to 20 if you put them together. So that's going to be something to look forward to in the future. But the big news is that the more serious charges, particularly the RICO charge, which would have put him away for life, he was found not guilty of.
They must have been close to a decision last night, because they told the judge they were hung up on that. The judge said, I want you to continue deliberating, but take the night off, go home, come back. It seemed like 1, 2, 3, they came back and they said to the judge they had a decision on the.
It was less than an hour of deliberation today, after 12 hours of deliberation previously. And I think Arthur made a very good point there in that, yeah, people will say, okay, they were deadlocked. This is kind of maybe what goes on with jurors, is they get in the room and after all, they're like, man, it's the end of the day. I can't change your mind about this. So this is not going to happen. They write the judge a note and he goes, everybody go home, take a deep breath, sleep on it. And the next day, the other juror, if there was 1 or 2, you sleep on it, you come back and maybe you think it a little bit differently. And obviously, whoever or however many that were the holdup, they were holding it up from becoming a not guilty because obviously the majority was on that side, and that's the way it swung this morning.
So interestingly, we had Peter Frankel on, former prosecutor, current defense attorney, in fact represented one of the personal assistants to Diddy in the trial. He was on our show earlier today, and he said the federal prosecutor in this case has like a 98%
well, the Southern
guilty.
District of New York has 95% conviction rate.
And so this is obviously a mixed bag, and they have to be disappointed. They didn't get the RICO count. They didn't get the sex trafficking count. They got basically transporting, sex traffickers.
But not to minimize it, there's still serious charges.
Right.
They're the lesser of the charges, but they're still, I mean, if you're facing potentially 10 years in prison, then you're probably not thinking it's too light, but it's much, much better than it would have been because the other 2 charges, the sex trafficking, 15 years is the minimum for that.
Right.
So now you're convicted of something where 10 years is the maximum. Right. So you've totally flipped the script, if you will, and you've got to be relieved if you're Sean Diddy Combs. And apparently his reaction in the courtroom and that of his family was one of relief.
Yeah, let me see if there's any